Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. I am here this evening in fabulous Wooten Woods, Only, Tennessee. I'm attending the Spirit of Music Camp, and I have the great pleasure to be able to talk tonight with a wonderful friend of Victor's, Michael. How are you doing?
Absolutely great, Jefferson.
It's so nice for you to be here, and I'm really looking forward to talking with you. You and Victor have gone back a ways. You've known him for a while.
Since 88.
1988.
Yeah, that was when Victor first came to Nashville and started being Victor in Nashville. He was already Victor, but, then it was the beginning of something
new.
Come to know, that's like the story of Victor Wooten.
Yes. So I usually like to ask guests how music came into their lives. And you play the cello, correct?
I am a cellist.
A cellist. So you were a cellist. And do you remember when music first, where you first remember music being part of your life? Did you take lessons? Did your parents play? When did music first tap you on the shoulder and say, Michael?
My first experiences were in singing,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother is a musician and studied piano and is still a very competent musician. She's 87 years old.
Wow, nice.
And she's played all her life and also played the pipe organ in our church and in other churches. My first experiences singing for people were age 6.
6 years old.
Yeah, I remember the song.
It
was called Long, Long Ago. It was about the birth of Jesus. But later on...
That was in church.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I had been inspired by watching other people sing solos in the church, and it was very exciting, so I got to do it.
Nice.
And that was singing. I am also a singer. The cello started around the time I was 9.
9. Did you pick the cello, or did the cello pick you?
We had the opportunity to study either violin or cello, and I talked it over with her, my mother, Janet, and she suggested that I see if I liked the cello, and she said later she suggested it because she thought it might actually be more pleasing and even easier.
It was big for you at that age, though, I guess, wasn't it? Bigger than a violin.
Well, in school, you had a smaller one at that age.
Oh. Like, it looked like they might have left it out in the rain or something?
No, I mean, there is such a thing as a 3/4 size cello, which most kids that age would use.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd bring it home, practice. I would miss one, recess on Thursday. Then I would hear the rest of my class out on the playing field, playing a game, kickball, my favorite game at that time.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel left out, or you?
No.
You enjoyed.
No. I willingly worked with my teacher, who was a fiddle player and played swing music, and she had inspired us by playing. She actually played it for me, and it was Alexander's Ragtime Band, something like that. And she played it on the fiddle for me and sang it, and I was going, wow, she can perform music, because I had never heard anything like a fiddle. It was always like, violin, classical things.
Mm-hmm. So it was more fun.
Well, she introduced me to something, but I, was a beginner, so I studied my exercises and learned to read the studies that were made for a beginner.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best ones was called Ode to Dad.
Ode to Dad.
Right, and I would play it for my father, and it was just 3 notes over and over again. D, A, D, D, A, D. You see what I mean?
I see what you mean.
And I played it for him, and he was very pleased.
Yeah, that's nice. It was very
Ode
nice.
to Dad.
Ode to Dad.
Yeah.
Just the 3 notes there.
Yeah.
Well, they're really 2 notes, I guess.
Well, 2 named notes, but 3 total.
Right. Okay. So that was 9 years old. You picked up the cello. Did you take a lot of lessons and continue to take lessons in school or church, or did you start getting into
Tragic circumstance.
bands, or what happened?
Tragic circumstance.
Oh, what?
Jefferson.
What?
I started in the Red Orchestra, and then I moved up to the Blue Orchestra when I was in 6th grade, or in my second year of, studying. I think it might have been 5th grade. And I was very proud.
Nice.
Very happy.
Nice.
In my school, playing in the orchestra. And then I found out we were going to move to another town, far away.
What town were you in before you moved?
In the beginning, I was a student at Garfield Elementary School in Coffeyville, Kansas.
Ah.
And at that time, you had the opportunity to learn an instrument in school, in that school system.
That was good.
Then, when the time came, my family moved to the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia.
Ah, Virginia. That's near.
My father began a new opportunity for his work, which was a really good thing, a really great situation.
Nice.
And it was a new, I was the new kid.
Cool. So were you able to pick up where you left off?
There was no music in the new school.
Oh.
Except, a little music with a music teacher for the whole class, but no study of an instrument. And I had to find a private teacher, and I began to go and study with him as a 6th grader.
Yeah. Well, how long did you take lessons that way, and when did you?
For 2 years, I studied with him.
2 years.
Yeah. And then at the end of the 2nd year, he said, Michael, I've showed you everything I can show you, and I'm going to send you to my teacher.
The teacher's teacher.
Right.
Ah. So that was good. You really must have done well at the time.
Beginning with that part of my study, I was with a master.
Oh,
He
good.
showed me all of the principles of the cello and how to play it, in a thorough study of the instrument. And I began to play in the Roanoke Youth Symphony when I was 12.
Oh, nice. Roanoke. So that's where you were. Roanoke.
You remember Roanoke,
Yeah.
Jefferson?
Yeah, down 81.
Yes.
Road 81.
Yes.
Yeah, went through there the other day, or by it. In July, on the way to the Music and Nature Camp.
It's called the Star City of the South.
Ah.
And it's also known as one of the places which is named as where bluegrass music started.
Huh.
Yes.
Wow.
In that area.
So did you at some point then start playing in bands or in other groups, combos, or?
I'm studying with a master teacher at that age, but my avenue for playing is in the youth symphony. And I was the only cello player in the youth symphony at that time.
And how long did you play with the youth symphony?
I continued to play with the youth symphony until I finished high school. But as I was with my teacher and I progressed, I was able to actually attain, a skill which allowed me to play in the Roanoke Symphony, which is, an adult ensemble, but it was because I could play.
Yeah. When did you move on to? When did you start with the adult symphony?
I kept doing both.
Ah.
I kept doing both.
And did you ever, at that sort of a young age, did you start playing in groups or combos or anything, or you were really in the symphony into your sort of early adult years?
The idea of the cello being in anything other than a classical ensemble, and of course, early on I had the opportunity to at least, play through string quartets with other students who were all older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was invited to do that because, I was able to. And then I also began to study movements from concertos.
So you were really classically trained. You're classical.
Yes, and my teacher absolutely was preparing me for, professional music education,
And then what happened after that?
Well, I had, pretty brilliant career in high school doing other things,
Mm-hmm.
sports, student government, and I was fifth in my class in high school. So it means I really studied. So there were plenty of other things happening. Nevertheless, after a certain time, I was in a string quartet, and we started going out and doing things that you would do with a string quartet, which would be like a very nice reception somewhere, or something like a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I was paid for that. So that was the beginning of gigging.
Ah, gigging. So
Gigging.
Did you gig then for a long time?
Well, the adult symphony was a gig.
Yeah.
Playing for weddings was a gig. Playing for the symphony ball, like Strauss, waltzes and things like that. That was a gig. I was once offered, while still in high school, the opportunity to be in a string section for the country artist Eddie Arnold. While he was on tour, but I wasn't going on tour. I was just playing one show. But I elected to go to the homecoming dance instead of doing the show.
Do you regret that?
No.
Okay. Well, when did you begin to think that music was a pretty powerful thing in your life, not just in your life, but, in general in society?
course, you're in you're in a development of your skills, and there's no limit to what's available to you when you're in the classical ensembles. There's no limit to that. Nevertheless, when I began to become more familiar with the music that was happening at that time, that was more like not classical music, and actually that didn't really include jazz either. It included the music that I was listening to. I very quickly got to a point, especially after the live album of the Woodstock Festival came out, and I heard all the music that was on that album. I also had a lot of the great recordings of that time, including the soundtrack from Easy Rider, which has all this classic music on it, and many other things. Some of those things were things that you could play cello along with, and at a certain point, I began to explore what the cello could do in those kinds of settings. But there were no bands. There's no situation yet. Not yet. But soon it was coming. It was coming.
So when was that? When you expanded and went on a new direction in your musical career?
It had to do at first with bluegrass music. And bluegrass music really attracted me severely, and I was playing the cello, so I began to consider that I would play fiddle music on the cello as more of what I could do with the instrument, and I found out that I could.
Nice. So then you continued to go on in that vein.
Well, that was early on, but I was now a university student.
Okay.
As a university student, once people found out I could play, they wanted me to jam with them, and they were guitarists and singers. And after I went to university in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, I was very quickly invited to do some small performance with someone who was a songwriter, and they had their music, and we started to perform together, and we became well known as a duo.
Nice.
And we even traveled to other colleges and gave performances, and that led to me playing with other people who had groups that the cello would work within. And they were, playing familiar music that had a place for the cello. And I learned how to interact with that kind of music through doing those things.
So then after college, were you a professional musician? Did you play music as your main
I was
thing?
a professional musician all through university, but no classical during that time. The last time I played with a symphony orchestra as a part of the cello section would have been when I received credit for it as a university student, and that was in the year 1974. I was not with or in any performance with any orchestra until I was a soloist with the Oklahoma City Symphony, and that was in the year 2004. So you can see I pretty much left that realm, left that avenue of music, because I had actually studied other things in university while I was doing gigs.
Right.
I studied other things in university, and I received a degree in chemistry. That's what I studied.
Fooling.
That's what I studied.
Wow.
And because of that, after I finished at the university. To go further with the cello, I chose to find an avenue, and that avenue turned out to be fiddle music.
Oh, I see.
But I was in a situation where very quickly I was in a band, and I wasn't really using the cello with the fiddle players in the band. I was playing the cello with the fingers and using it like a bass.
Uh-huh.
And that's what worked with a band in that setting with that kind of music. And we started getting around and having some success as a group.
Oh, great.
But the other part of it had to do with what that offered. And it offered the opportunity to really find out what you could do with the cello. And by that time, there were pickups for cellos. And when I got the very first pickup that was made for the cello, electric cellos had been custom-made instruments before that. But after I got a pickup, then I could play with anybody.
Oh,
and
nice.
I did. I played, all kinds of things after that. And I started to learn what I could do with the instrument in these different settings.
Well, then, when did you, maybe we could fast forward to, when did you run into Victor Wooten?
I met Victor Wooten somewhere during a time when I was in Nashville, Tennessee, probably around 1988. And that was about the time that the Wooten brothers had come to Nashville to start doing music in Music City, USA.
Yeah. Were you living in Nashville yourself?
I'd already lived there.
Oh, you'd already, okay.
And then I was raising my kids in the Washington, D.C. area. And that was, that was the thing to do at that time.
Yeah, well, that's what I did. I'm from Washington, D.C. I was raising my kids there in the 80s, 90s.
Hey, we were there, man.
I know. You do look very familiar.
Of course I do.
I'm trying to think if I may have seen you somewhere.
I was not actually doing any music at all at that time because
kids.
I was, very involved with that. And I found out it was more practical to really give that, what it required.
Right. So then, did you, you brought up your kids. Did you then, after that, get back into playing?
At a certain time, it really became necessary for me to do that, and I went back to Nashville on my own.
I see.
And very quickly after that, I was beginning to work on my own album of, original music and original songs. And that continued until I completed that project. But in the process, I also moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh. Well, how did you meet Victor?
He was a friend of an engineer and producer, Kurt Story, and they had met at Busch Gardens, and they had always talked about it, and the Wooten brothers were so, such a tremendous group of musicians that they were really going to do that. Mm-hmm. They were going to do that, and they were going to go do music in Nashville and progress in their career in that way. And when they arrived in Nashville, that's when I met Victor, and we just started to do different kinds of things. But very quickly, Victor was already as a bass player becoming very very well known for his playing.
Yes.
he arrived in Nashville a fully developed musician in his bass playing, and that meant big things for him.
Yeah. Did you play with him?
Some, but when you have that instrument that is part of jazz and rock, mainly jazz ensemble. For me, I was doing like recording sessions and doing string section things and things like that. So I was working with other people, mostly the violinist and fiddle player Buddy Spiker, who is in the Country Music Hall of Fame now and still living. But my original interest in being in Nashville was to go further into string playing and learn about how to use the cello in recording sessions and learn some things about arranging for strings. And I was very fortunate to work with Buddy.
Well, you know that Victor interviewed him in a podcast, and he said that he looked at you as someone to model his character Michael in the book.
You might want to ask him about that. My name is Michael. The character in the book is Victor's imagination, but it is inspired by something.
By something.
And we did, have a certain, interaction that led to him really being able to write stories at that time about what fit the situation, which was that we were using creativity, imagination to make recordings of songs that were, part of a personal, like a personal mythology of stories and new worlds that were described in songs and music. All of those things were happening around a project that I was working on, that I was continuing to work on over several years, and Victor was part of all the sessions, because the best musicians that I could possibly work with were Victor and his brothers, and they definitely were a big part of my project, very big part of it.
Oh, great. So you and Victor got to know each other very well through these projects.
Well, in music, because he was already very busy with, actually the beginning of the Flecktones was also during that time. And that's also when he met Bela Fleck.
Yeah. Well, the book that Victor wrote has been very inspiring for me, and I think many, many other people. He captures so many facets of music, and talks about it in a way that's really helpful and unique, and I think insightful. Do you have thoughts about that, about the way that he has written about music in the book?
There's no question that the book has very, very special thoughts, ideas, and a wonderful story that has continued to attract new readers and new interest in the story that Victor's writing. And he is working on a second book, which is a continuation of that story, The Music Lesson. And he is going to publish a second volume, which is a continuation of the music lesson as an idea But the subtitle of the book is A Spiritual Search Through Music.
For growth through music,
Yeah,
right?
grow through music. And this is a central motif of all the Wooten brothers and all the Wooten family. Spiritual meaning and a place in that realm which is meaningful, spiritually.
It's been very meaningful to me, as I say to many others. Very spiritual. Do you consider yourself spiritual, or is it?
Jefferson, I can see that you are very spiritual in playing the cello, and I have now played the cello since I was a boy. I am now a fully grown man who has been learning everything that the cello is about for well over 50 years of playing. You better believe it's spiritual.
Nice. Yes, I guess so. That's for sure. And how would you describe that spirituality, or has it affected you, or how does music affect others? If you've been playing for 50 years and seeing all the things that you've seen.
That's very serious, Jefferson, because on the one hand, there's not there in the beginning was a technical development, but then if you're familiar with what the pattern or the path of a spiritual musical experience is, the best example are the masters, and the masters are not considered to be ready until they're really in their, it would be at the end of their 5th decade of life. Mm-hmm. And that everything you do leading up to that place is your preparation for mastery. And that is in the realm of spiritual vibration and vibrational reality toward other human beings with that instrument. And that's a process of development and of a certain, not necessarily a skill, of a mindfulness of the meaning of it.
The mindfulness of the meaning of it, of playing music.
Of what the cello is, and how it works, and what it is intended for, and how it does fulfill that role and that vibration, how it fulfills it. And at first you have to be able to perform it, make it happen. Mm-hmm. Then you learn the process that opens a pathway, a place that people can recognize and that they can feel. That's another development after your technical development. You see that it's something that takes experience and time with what you're playing means, and the meaning of it deepens over time, and you begin to see more of what it can do in its vibration and certain ways of playing and certain environments, and also becoming accustomed to what people respond to and what really brings them some relief or something that is like an encouragement to them. And the cello and the sound of the cello have been described as an encouragement to people through the difficulties. And the cello is known for this and has been described by the great masters in this way.
Mm-hmm.
That it is in that place as an instrument, and that the playing is in that place as an expression of compassion and healing toward other people who are in some need of it.
So music, and for you in particular, the cello, which is your instrument, it can be a way that people can feel better, can heal, can grow, can enhance their lives. Well, that's pretty powerful.
I agree, and we've had a lot of discussions here lately.
That's the spirit of music camp.
At Spirit of Music, our discussions are really about what lies underneath that, and how is it possible, and how does it work. And there is a science of playing for people who are in need of this lifting of the difficulties and the emotional barrenness that modern life presents to people. But in any human situation where a person is bereaved or sick or in need of something that will bring them into the light, an act of compassion that is in vibration became something that the cello is fully able to satisfy, fully able to fulfill. But there was a process of developing a certain experience and a certain way of doing that had to come through doing it.
So the cello and music does really help individuals with this. How does it do that?
Well, we consider, first of all, the history of the instrument, and the earliest evidence that the cello was being used for the purpose of healing is 5 millennia, and it's the first bowed instrument in the history of humans, and it's 5,000 years old as an instrument, and it has to do with the bow.
So the cello, it's in particular, has healing qualities and aspects for people, and the bow.
Yes.
What is it about the bow?
The origins of the bow have to do with the presence of the horse on the plains of Mongolia. And the horse was only common at that time, or for the most part, in that part of Asia, in that part of the world. That's where the horse came from. There were no horses in North America 5,000 years ago.
Right, I know, yeah.
They were in northern China and Mongolia, and they lived on the plains, and they were wild animals. They were wild, and they were eventually, tamed, domesticated, ridden by Mongolian herdsmen who became horsemen later. But the cello and the bow in particular, it was the bow that made it all possible. And the bow had to have hair on it that came from the horse's tail.
Ah, I see.
And that the cello was strictly for medicine. There was no entertainment in that world. There was only pain, suffering, sickness, famine, and death. So to help people through all those difficulties, a shaman would use a drum and maybe a musical instrument and various rituals, charms, incantations, but the instrument that was used to induce a trance in a person who was delirious or depressed or in great emotional distress, a calming influence, and taken very seriously by the people of that time as the only source of healing. There were some things that we would say were herbal medicine. There were some things that we would say were hocus pocus that people believed in, and because they believed in them, they worked. But the vibration of the cello was absolutely used to help people get off their pain, help them get off their situation into a more comforting place that would allow them a little tiny little lift. And the shaman relied on the vibration of the cello to almost to actually act upon someone who was, there were many beliefs, but if I describe it as a person who's been occupied by evil spirits, that's a good enough explanation for those times, because that was their belief. And the cello could dispel those things because of its vibration and its presence and the power of the shaman who had learned how to do something with it that would move a person. There is a famous film, and I direct people toward it now, and you can find it. It's a beautiful story. It was filmed in Mongolia with real Mongolian people who portray the scenes, and it's called The Weeping Camel. And you can find it. It's a short film, and it's a story of a herdsman who's about to lose a calf because the mother will not nurse it. And the mother camel is rejecting the remaining of 2 calves after she lost the first one. I call upon the shaman, and he comes, and he whispers something to the camel and plays the cello. And it's the primitive Mongolian cello that I can't even say the name of, but he plays it, and he is a master, and he is a shaman, and the way he does it causes the camel to shed a tear. And that's why the film's called The Weeping Camel.
Nice. The
camel sheds a tear and looks at the calf standing all forlorn and hungry. And the calf comes over, and it allows the calf to nurse. The shaman says goodbye, and all is well. His work is done.
So let me ask you, have you had situations yourself in playing the cello that have been had healing effects on people?
Let me tell you, Jefferson, these things are real.
Mm-hmm.
The vibration is a healing vibration, and it has existed for thousands of years, coming from bowed instruments that are played in this manner. And there is a certain way of playing that fits it. In more modern era, in my own experience, I have many times played for people who were dying, who were very sick and were going to die not long after I played for them.
Mm-hmm.
And on one occasion, I was playing for someone at the moment of their death. And these things are significant to me, and in all of them, I was asked to do that.
And it was comforting for the people.
We mention comforting, but it's also a form of permission, and it's also a form of affirmation, and it's especially vibration that gently lifts the weight of things off a person by its presence. And it is very holographic and can reach back into a person's past. And it also opens a pathway for that person's transition, which could either be getting well or dying. Or it opens a pathway that is permission for them to be different, to feel better, and to shed their troubles.
That's
and
good.
Walk away from it. And
That's good.
there are many things about it that are easy to witness, easy to see, and that it's something that in a world such as ours, if you find anything that will work in this way, you want to use it.
That's right.
You want to use it.
The music lesson has been a very successful book, and what do you think about some of the key aspects of the principles of the book as Victor has written it?
Jefferson, you've hit the nail on the head here. This is a fantastic way to discuss these things, because in present times, enough people have looked into this to not only have a theory and not only have evidence, but a form of explanation for these things. And the simplest way to put it is, we live in a vibrational universe in which all the things we know are the result of cosmic vibration that acts upon all matter, all energy, and the earth and all the universe. And apparently now it's been determined that it's simultaneous throughout the universe in a wave that is underneath all matter and energy, and appears to humans as a harmonic of something that is not visible to human beings, but except as the color blue. So not just
the color blue?
Yes, not the blue that you see with your eyes, Jefferson. It is a blue that appears to you in the presence of certain vibrations, and your eyes will be closed, but you will see blue. And it's been characterized in various discussions as a cosmic vibration that is underneath all things. Some people have called it by name. One of the names is cryptochrome, which is a color that holds all the information, or a wave that is as if it were a color, but it holds all the meaning of all things, and that is an actual physical vibration, just as a radio wave is an actual physical vibration. But this is at a much, much higher frequency that has to do with the vibration that governs life processes and the very deepest inner workings of all life processes that are present in our dimension as human beings.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about was the mission of our organization, making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. From what you've been talking about, certainly music is very powerful, the vibrations, the intention. How have you seen the power of music affect people? What can we do to really make a better world through music? Do you have thoughts about that?
Jefferson, once again, you've come up with a fantastic way of naming something that we can address very simply with a few statements about how this is. You mentioned what we would call a peacefulness or a tranquility of the spirit. If an individual can be peaceful and tranquil, they cannot be eventually among other people or know what peacefulness and a tranquil, place is. In other words, that we would call that the vibration of the mother, total acceptance, unconditional, complete and infinite acceptance and love and compassion for all things. And that includes human beings and every aspect of life that would not necessarily even be to your advantage. You have a love for that. And as that is expressed to another in the presence of someone else who is in a great need, you have the opportunity to lift them in a place where they're not so desperate and they're not as liable to commit violence. They're not as liable to be anything but the best they can be and who they really are. It's an encouragement, and it is a comfort and a soothing nature that is very much a part of the animal world also. And we see these things throughout all of life, and it is characterized in a way as a feminine, creative vibration that is nurturing and compassionate. And we've been able to see that vibration and vibrational encouragement that's in the form of a musical vibration from this instrument, the cello in particular, leads to a different state of being that is innately a peaceful, compassionate being in a perfected state of awareness. And the vibration leads them to that because it's guided cosmically.
One of the things that I was particularly meaningful to me in the book was when the character Michael says, intention is the key to everything. What do you think about that, or how would you explain it? Do you agree about that?
Jefferson, this mention of the formation or the perfection of intent, I tell you, when that statement is made in the book, it's Victor's awareness and knowledge of what intent really means, and he did actually gain that from his upbringing. Mm-hmm. But as he mentions it, I echo that also, and it has to do with a very wonderful fact about musical vibration and intention. And this is also presented in a very wonderful book. I cannot mention the author, I can't quote it, but the title of the book is, and this is a book on vibrational healing, mm-hmm. and the tradition and history of vibrational healing, mainly in the Ayurvedic culture of India, and that the title of the book is spoken as Nada Brahma. So I would spell it, but I'll just say Nada Brahma, and I'll allow you to find it in that way by how I say it. And in this book,
I'll check it out.
you will, and you will be able to tell viewers, listeners, how to find it. This is a simple explanation of what's occurring with intent. There's a way to do something with an instrument where you haven't given it any thought, and it may sound just absolutely wonderful. But the perfection of intent changes the way the instrument's played, and it changes the way the vibration is received by the viewer. And we call them the viewer or the experiencer, not really just the listener, because it's going in through different channels or through another avenue. We hear things, and what we hear is an indication of what is there. But with the perfection of intent, allow me to make a simple statement, which would be a way of viewing what the intent of a musical vibration is. Are you ready, Jefferson?
I'm ready.
I offer this healing vibration. I offer this vibration, for I am peace. That intent, perfected without words, and it can be reformed in a very simple statement, but that's the statement that we're referring to, leads to a certain way of playing and a certain perfection of tone and other things that create what in the writings that I mentioned is referred to as a spiritual vortex, which is a spiral pattern of rising vibration at a very, very high frequency that is outside the limits of human hearing and is only sensed as a healing vibration that is connecting with the spirit essence of a human being. And it's still in the form of vibration, but it's the combination of the player, the actor, his intent in creating a musical vibration. It acts over a distance, and it acts throughout all time simultaneously because of it, because of the perfection of intention. And as that occurs, a person receives it as an encouragement and as a healing vibration that goes into their body, and they don't actually hear it. But there have been things that were used to find out if there were any indication that there were something like this existed, and those things verified that there is something, and that it's coming from the difference between what is a facsimile event, which is like a recording, even made with intent, but it's not coming from a live human being. When it comes from a live human being, there's other information that cannot be heard, but it is sensed and received by the viewer and changes them physically, internally, in subtle ways, but they're the very ways that the body uses to turn the tide. And from that moment on, they have been encouraged, and they've received the information from the creator of the vibration, not the creator of the vibration, but the person who has acted upon the vibration to bring it to the viewer, to the receiver. And as they receive it, they are lifted into a place of vibrance. We call it vibrance.
Vibrance.
They receive this vibration, which is derived from a cosmic source with intent. And then, as they receive it, they know they're receiving it, and they come forward with a life-giving response. And this has been shown throughout centuries and centuries of it's not pure shamanism. It's not shamanism. It's a physical process that human beings arrived at because they found out that it actually does what it does. In other words, it's an empirical history of the healing vibration in musical tones.
That's very profound.
Thank you, Jefferson, for the opportunity to put these ideas forth, because it's not that often we get to do this, I mean, as, a discussion. We may be called upon to demonstrate it and do this for people who are in need. But I want to remind you, Jefferson, that there wouldn't be any need for us to discuss it, except that so few people know about it. And it's not like you have to believe in it. It will work.
All right, the
and
healing.
It will work every time because it's connected to a cosmic intention, which human beings are made from. And, that's a
pretty much
big
the
discussion.
deal. Yeah, that's the real deal there.
Let's call that the real deal, Jefferson.
Yeah.
I want to encourage people to look into these things if they are, especially if they're playing not just the cello, but an instrument that can be brought before someone and played lovingly in a certain way. And there are many sources to become familiar with this for any musician who's in any opportunity to be before someone who is in need. And we don't say if they're sick or not, they are in need. And as it turns out, Jefferson, every human being is in need of this. And as I never expected to have the opportunity to experience some of these things, as I did, I then discovered that I was being called upon to do it in the same way for a place that most people would say is the vibration of the departed. And that's very much the beginning of a way of seeing that we are, as human beings, we are crossing into other realms even as we live, and that we are able to, because of these vibrations that we sense from musical vibrations, and that this leads us into an infinite world, not only of emotion, but of being, and the difference between being and non-being. And apparently there is no non-being when it comes to vibration. Vibration's eternal and present throughout the universe, and is guided by an under vibration that's simultaneous throughout the living universe.
Wow.
And, this is a new finding, that the universe is way, 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 way bigger than anybody ever imagined, even astronomers. and it shocked them how big the universe is. But it is under a theory of vibration. It can be seen as all one thing, and that a human being is a holographic realm that represents the entire universe in a living thing, and that the vibrational part of it is simultaneous throughout all things. So a human being can actually, it's not about connecting. You're made out of the cosmic vibration of meaning, and that meaning is pre-written into everything and can only produce perfected forms that are the things we witness. And it's in our perfection of those things that we have the opportunity to offer it to people in need. Because people in need are not in that opportunity as they are experiencing their, situation. Their need is there because they're the receiver.
So would you say that musicians almost have an obligation to play music, to ply their craft, to because the universe, because humans need music?
Jefferson, I really see these things as so completely and so well guided in the way the universe occurs that I, at this point, see everything working perfectly. And that we, as you and I are in our existence in this lifetime, are witnessing not so much miracles, the way it's supposed to be. And the way it can be is in our dreams of new worlds and our dreams of what we are with the people who we care about. And that those are all things that can be fully realized in our own world, in our own lives, in our reality, in our lifetime. All those things are fully realized because they're written already. And the vibration that created human beings is the vibration that leads us to fulfillment, destiny, and our offering of a healing vibration and encouragement to not just to people who seem to be in need, to anyone, and also to anything around us. Let me tell you, Jefferson, dogs love the cello. You will have
Nice.
a dog just come sit right at your feet, and you'll be playing, and it will stay right there with you and love every minute of it, and you can see it, not just enjoying it. It's bathing in the vibration. It's drawn to it. These are the sounds of the mother, the sounds of the womb.
Humans react the same way, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a great gift that we have these things because, let me tell you, Jefferson, without the things that we're talking about, the universe presents some pretty harsh scenes when it comes to the narrow band of vibration, the narrow range of vibration that we are made in is paper thin across a universe that would be, wider than the widest ocean. And the little paper thin place in the middle of it that life is made in is where we have to be to have consciousness. The rest of the universe, it's not for us.
So the healing power of music actually can happen across distance.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be just a person who's in a room. It could be out, far away.
Not only distance, Jefferson. Apparently, music is so holographic and so woven into and outside the fabric of space and time that it is spherical throughout all time and space, and it's a forever vibration that once set in motion will continue to emanate and radiate forever, even if it's only a small vibration. We're talking about the butterfly's wings here, Jefferson. The smallest vibration that is perfectly formed is eternal in its own nature and in its own reality, and is outside all time and all space, distance, dimension, and moves throughout all dimensions, and is the very vibration that human beings are occurring out of or from, that life it occurred out of and from. And as you can see us talking about these things, it's a good thing that we can, because it seems like a subject not that easy to name all these things. But when a person has these experiences, all this is affirmed. It doesn't have to be verified. Here's the armadillo right behind you, Jefferson. There he goes. Look at him.
Wow, look
It's
at that. An
pretty
armadillo
impressive.
just went by in the pavilion.
No, he's right there. He's right here with us. There he goes. Fantastic, isn't it?
Cool.
Here we are at
We're giving it a little fist
Spirit
bump to
of
everybody.
Music with Victor Wooten, and we're talking about something that is so, you'd have to say it's very beautiful, profound, and truly wonderful, Jefferson, that we can talk about something like this, because, the pathway for human beings is now outlined as a vibrational pathway that is open to anyone and everyone, as not, you don't even have to use the word healing once you come to this. You're going to come into a way of knowing what this vibrational place is, that is not just a place, it's the story of everything, Jefferson. It's the story of everything.
Do you think that music is an entity?
My feeling now is that we have the range of vibration that we can sense, but that as the form of something is perfected, it has a much wider range, and that we're not talking about the dynamic range of visible tones. We're talking about something that is extremely high frequency, that is not easy for us to even sense with instruments. I mean, scientific measurement. It is something more that, as people are in the encouragement of vibration and musical vibration, it reaches a perfected state, which changes things toward a perfected form of intent, directed by intention. So this is like an amazing gift, just to be aware of it, because this is closer and closer to the fact of what cosmic information and meaning is to human beings. And we are offered this in a most wonderful way that includes something like music, which is representation of a perfected form and a perfected vibration that can be felt. And with musical instruments and with singing, human beings have quickly found those places, and they're very well known. The rest of the world has a lot of other things to deal with, but when they come into this perfected vibration and this perfected form, they cannot help but recognize it. And this is very well known that there is at first a sensing of these things through the vibration and from the musical vibration. And that later, as you become accustomed to the perfection of the intention, perfection of the form, you become accustomed to being in the perfection of all things. And that's why we're here, Jefferson, to be perfected and to be in the abundance of the Spirit. In that we are infallible, and human beings are offered something that really is a form of encouragement that's coming from, where is it coming from, Jefferson? It's coming from everywhere at once. And of course, ancients may not have had a theory for these things, but they definitely felt them and knew them well. And that's why musical vibration and musical healing with vibration has come to be so important and getting more and more prevalent and more interesting to people everywhere. And it always has been.
So when you're playing music, how do you find that place where, some people say you can get out of your head, or, put your mind behind and play with music flowing through you?
Well, it's a great way of describing it, music falling through you. Everybody's like always referring to powerful technique and the genius of a composer and various things. Apparently, we also have been offered a great gift in respect to this kind of thing, and it has to do with simplicity. And that has to do with an underlying complexity that arises out of simplicity. Starting with simplicity, we have an etheric beauty that is so sublime that it leads to complexity in its perfected vibration. And as a simple form is perfected, that vibration then leads to a perfected complexity that is our world, and that is the fulfilled emotion and the satisfied feeling that is part of knowing. Knowing is the evidence we have that these things can be perfected. And of course, this is something that has been present in the world for ages, for thousands of years, and that people's awareness of it comes and goes because we have, an everyday, ordinary existence, and then we have other people who are called upon. It's a calling, Jefferson, to be in this kind of discussion. And as we do that, I see that we're really naming a place that human beings are supposed to be in, and that we are made for this, and that we have everything that human beings need from this cosmic, infinite, intelligent vibration that is, ever present and is underneath all things. That is a wondrous thing.
What do you think would happen if humans didn't have music? If music people didn't pay attention to it, and it's sort of slowly died?
Apparently, this is the subject of Victor's second book, Music Lesson Part 2. Of course, it's not for me to say much about it because I haven't seen his notes or what he plans to put in the book. But he's told me that much, and I feel that it's one way of looking at it, but from my point of view, Jefferson, what the things we're talking about are inevitable. That the way the universe is made and is, it's like it's a little turned around. Everything you and I are experiencing was already present, but we are the embodiment of that reality. We are the physical embodiment of a vibrational reality that created life and everything that led to the existence of human beings.
So we humans really can't survive without music because we're music.
How about that one? Wow, you said it. You said it. Jefferson.
Well, I've been
You are a brilliant man.
I've been hanging out at Victor Wooten's camp and talking with you.
Spirit of music. Don't you think that's a great name for this experience? Spirit of music.
It sure
awesome.
Is. It's totally fabulous. It has really grabbed my soul. I invited music into my soul. I said, I'd like to help. What can I do? I think I'd like to have, this experience of the music flowing through me.
And apparently, it's what created you. So it was like I was talking with my friend, and he's a very accomplished percussionist and drummer. And we were just having this kind of discussion. I said, "What do you think the sound of two hydrogen atoms colliding would be?" And he goes, "Oh, that's easy." Because that's the sound hydrogen makes when you light it in a test tube. But then I was going, wait a minute. If human beings are made of something that is, a combination of a carbon and a hydrogen and oxygen, and that's what we're made of. There's so much of that happening inside a human body that it's very likely that really is the sound. Only it's not something you can record. But I asked him the question, and he answered it. And that's the answer.
Mm.
He's made of it. That's what it sounds like.
Well, Michael, this has been a fabulous conversation.
Thank you, Jefferson, for having me on this podcast. And I really believe you're onto something here.
Well, I think Victor and you and the Wooten brothers and a lot of people are onto it, and I'm coming along for the ride, and I hope a lot of people do. All right, thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Jefferson.
It's Michael, the one and only Michael. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.